Inspiring women for over 30 years and reaching over 10,000 professionals worldwide per month. We're joined today by the president of IPWS, Theresa Hudzinski. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
With the reach that you've been able to achieve with IPWS, what is the message that you're actually trying to send?
Well, for IPWS, our core values are connect, inspire, grow, and lead, right? So from our inception, that's, what we strive to achieve. But really our message is to help women, bring them together, create a platform for people from all different walks of life, from all different industries. It doesn't matter if you're in the manufacturing, a teacher, an entrepreneur, bringing them together so people have a chance to not be alone, right? Because we have so many common things that we share, that we go through in life. And so there's a platform to bring people together. So we might not be everything for everyone, but we get them to the right people by having that platform where they can come together. So for Shanghai, right, it's so transient, and from that perspective, it is really great for us to be able to have events, different types of events. And so when we were founded over 30 years ago by Diane Elong, she started noticing that there was more color in conferences. She's looking out at the stage and she was like, hey, I need to meet these women, these people, and bringing them together. So at its core, it's bringing connection, and then, people are away from home. They don't know where to start. They don't know where to look for. My own personal journey with IPWS is I needed friends, to be honest, right? Like I have my work friends, obviously, but I needed something outside of work. So I Baidu'd, internet or women's organization in Shanghai, and they came up, So I remember the first event that I went to is called "Is Feminism Tainted?" So it was a very interesting conversation, and just listening to the different experiences and that all of the women had, and everyone coming at it from a different point of view. So it's really bringing us together to share, learn from each other, support each other, from that overall. And that's our overall message is let's come together. Like, let's do this. You're not alone. We'll do it together, hand in hand.
So it's a lot of it is a social aspect.
Yes.
To give, I guess, a community to someone that might be lacking friendship in a certain area.
Right.
Interesting.
And so we're saying also from that social aspect, we have a lot of professional development, but we also want to look at your personal development because you need to be whole, right? You can't just look at one side of your life. So if we incorporate some of these things where we have a wellness day, right? And we're focusing on breathing or that, from that perspective too, we just had a great panel on AI transformation, so it's a little bit different, Tuesday we have something on public speaking, how can you get better at public speaking? So we try to touch a little bit of everything to, so to draw more people in and then they can meet other people.
International Women's Day. What does that mean to you personally on an individual level? And what does that mean to IPWS?
I think as I get older, it becomes more important to me. And I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I really want her to start understanding more about this day. But there is a gap. There's still a gender gap. There's parity. We're not going to hit, a parity for like another 157 years or something crazy like that. So it's just a reminder of the action that still needs to be taken, right? And I think you have to be careful with International Women's Days events because some is about flowers or, from that. Some you have really some great panels, of women survivors or, different things. It's really each company handles it a bit different.
Yeah.
For us, what we want to do is be able to, again, work with different organizations and partner with different organizations to, reach the broader population for awareness. I think that is key because the more we are aware, the more we understand, the more we support each other, and whether it be men or, women, right? Because allyship is a huge thing, right? And very important to International Women's Day.
I'm just picking up a few of the words and then tell me what does that mean to you. You mentioned allyship because a lot of men may be thinking, there's an International Women's Day. When do we get a day?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. At my previous company, I actually led the gender community, right? So it was a gender equality community, and I had both men and women on that. And I would say, you know, you do hear that, especially around that time, and putting those together, but you just kind of have to, okay, come on, you push it aside and through that. But you know, the men that were on the equality group, they actually joined for their daughters, right? So they could better understand, right? So I had one, and he was one of my team members as well. His daughter's 13, 14. He doesn't understand her, right? So he wanted to better himself and to understand more to do that. And, you know, and it, you know, there were several other like that. I want to say is that generationally speaking, I would say the younger generation of gentlemen are really more into allyship, right? They don't see that difference, you know, where you might have seen in later generations.
Over the last few decades, or over the years of you leading IPWS, what have you seen in terms of evolution for women in roles of leadership?
This is a good question, you know, and I think we've had a unique experience with the pandemic, right? Because you actually had a lot of women leave the workforce, a lot of leaders leave the workforce to be able to, you know, whether it be remote learning for their kids or how, you know, there was a lot of pressure, you know, when it came to that. I've seen great strides in women leadership, right? And I see, you know, top companies with, you know, CEOs, you know, from that, but I also see women leaving the workforce, right? Menopause is a huge thing, right? This is actually causing women to leave the workforce, right? There's lots of studies that are being done. The Hong Kong Women's Federation, they were doing some studies recently of, you know, what is the true impact, right? Because it's different than what you'd be used to. So that's a consideration women have to have, you know, as they get further in their career. Then they have this, you know, biological thing that like kind of slams them, right, from that. So it is definitely a uniqueness that not necessarily men have, right? And so, like I said, there's strides and then there's steps back, right? And I think we've seen that a little bit all over the world, right? Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand Prime Minister, that was a woman. She was very open and vulnerable. She led her country during that pandemic and kept them quite safe, right, from that. And she's always that, you can't say that I can't be strong and not be compassionate. Like, they go hand in hand, right? And I think the more we have leaders in the workforce, all over, in every area, we have more women out there that shows, it's not just about being emotional or this, is that when you show the compassion, when you create safe spaces, people excel, you know, and women tend to be good at creating that space from that. So that's where I've seen some definite, you know, positives, and then I have seen in several countries and a lot of places steps back, right? And there is definitely DEI fatigue right now, and I think that that's one that people just get concerned on, right? So you had this big push for all of the DEI, and now you're seeing it kind of come back a little. So I hope we don't go too far back. You know,
that's a very interesting point. Can you, for some of the viewers out there that may not have too much to do with DEI, can you talk about DEI fatigue and what that means?
From that perspective, I think there was a period of time where companies really put the focus on diversity, inclusion, you know, and equity, right, from that. And so, but many places pushed really, really hard, right, from that. And so then people are just like, I don't want to hear about it. Even on Women's Day, why is that? People like, or we've got to do this. Why do we have to do that? And so I wouldn't say it was too far, but I do understand coming back and finding a middle ground, right? Because again, it's about understanding each other. So I think it really, the push gave more awareness, right? But like anything, you know, things ebb and flow, right? Similar thing like when we talk about resilience or anything, when you fly this high all the time, right, you get exhausted. You need to come down, take a breath, reevaluate, right? What is the right message? Because the message changes depending on what's going on in the world. So the DEI message needs to be there, but what does it mean today versus what it meant, you know, 5 years ago, you know, from that in the height, you know, from that.
I guess you're right. The scope definitely changes as the landscape changes.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see a cultural or regional difference in terms of DEI and as well as women in leadership positions and how support systems may or may not be there?
You Shanghai is a unique place for women, and actually, you find a lot of women are senior leaders in Shanghai, right?
Yeah.
Might not be the case in other cities in China, that. So I think that we're quite lucky here in Shanghai. So it definitely, there is cultural things, and then there's still a lot of companies that are just kind of a boys' club, right? From that perspective, no matter where you are in the world, right? From that, so it really, really, again, like you said, is what's going on, the scope of things, what is the, the pulse check, from that experience. But yes, Shanghai is always quite unique. So that's why it's important for us, even on like International Women's Day, all of the things that it brings awareness that it's not just about us here. It's about, go out to a tier 2, tier 3 city and other places in the world. Like, so it's not just about that moment. It's how are you making a difference for women around the world, right? Girls and women, One thing I would say, I was sick when, there was a recent change, I think in Afghanistan, where women are not allowed to talk out loud, right? Not to use their voice. So we have to be their voice, right? Until they can use their voice again, right? So I think that's what, for me, is important for us to be able to, yes, we have a privilege here, and how do we take that privilege and use it to help other people?
That's a very good point. I liked how you also touched on the fact that there are certain boys' clubs in certain industries and companies and so forth. At HQTS, I see almost probably half of our senior leadership are all women. So, and how I see that affect the downstream of employees like middle management and frontline staff, it does, like you said, how we should use our privilege to then give voices for those that may be missing this voice. I see that in our lower, I guess, the downstream, where people are getting understood a lot far better. For example, male leadership roles or males in leadership roles may not necessarily understand the challenges someone in the front line that happens to a female may have, right?
Yes.
So I think that is quite important, or at least I've seen that work for us. So is there an incentive for companies to create these support systems for women?
I think, yes, absolutely. Yes. From that
Simply,
yes.
yes.
But I think that it's important too, because I don't want to say bagging on a boys' club or anything like that, but it really comes down to understanding each other as humans, right? And men have a uniqueness to themselves as well. There are definitely men that have that. That I have to provide, I have to do this, and if I'm not doing that, so that's a uniqueness that they feel that they take on, right? From that. So it's really about going back, making sure we work better together, right? So we have to understand what's going on in each other's lives, right? You have to understand, hey, you know what? You're experiencing that, like women who come back from maternity, right? It is hard to leave your child, from coming back, right?
Yeah.
But you have to do it, right? So how can you make a program that actually helps you do that, but doesn't impact the business? So it's like win-win, right? And from that, so we do have to continue to look at those things. Otherwise, you're just going to keep having women walk out the door, from that, or not have kids, or not want to start a family because it's going to cost them too much in their career, and nothing in our personal lives really should, keep us from what we want to accomplish in our careers.
I remember a company where they tried the DEI, or they tried to have these type of programs for women. I feel like they've done it wrong, because there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do them. They provided something they called like a mentorship program, but they specified it was just for women. But they weren't specific in what they were mentoring. So what that meant was a lot of men in that company started to feel like, why don't we have a mentorship program for men? Right? We want to also progress and pursue certain things in our career too. Why do we not have that? But I feel like what you just mentioned, where if they had reworded that mentorship program and be more specific about what they were doing for women, a lot of the men would be like, you know what, it makes sense, because the women potentially might have just given birth to a few children and they're just returning to the workforce, and they do need a mentorship program specifically for this to bring them back in. Whereas that may not be relevant for men.
it really kind of goes back to each company's core values, right, and what they want to focus on. And a lot of the DEI stuff over the past few years has been a checklist, right? Like, okay, DEI, check.
Yeah.
This check. We got
Mentorship
check.
program.
Yep, check. And then like this check versus truly believing in it so that they sustain it, right? And so, and it goes either way, you know, from that. There should be development programs for both, right? And combined, you know, from that perspective, because, you know, we all have something to learn from each other, right? So, but yeah, I really do feel that you can't just make some of these things a checklist item. So we have to move past that.
As a president of IPWS, over the years, what have you seen to be the most effective way in inspiring and empowering women?
Telling your story. Storytelling is very important. People, you know, today I was sharing a story at an event, my story, right? And so one thing that happened to me over the past few years, or decision, you know, my family and I made, is that we moved my husband and 2 kids back to the U.S. My husband is at a career crossroads, not so easy to do in Shanghai, you know, to figure it out. They went back. And that was the hardest year of my life, right? Because I have them as my support structure, right? Then I had to lean on other people, and then you feel guilty about leaning on other people. The reason why it's important to share that story is some people are doing this. They have the same experience, or something close to it.
Yeah.
So it's by our stories that we share, right? And there's like one of those quotes where it's like, your story could be someone's survival guide later, right? Like, so it might not be exactly the same thing, but how you handled it, how you went through, you know, you shared, can really just move people, right? And I think that is important because, again, we all have something, you know, that we are going through, and we all can learn from each other. So it's definitely sharing your story is the most effective.
That's a very good point. So it's almost like being relatable to whoever's listening, because but through your story, they might have seen that's a good action to take. I should not do that. I should do this. Right. Teresa's done it before. She's made it work. I could do it too.
Right.
Can you share some insights on some of the challenges that women might face when pursuing a leadership role?
You know, this comes up with myself all the time. Emotion. Right. And so you would see it, like I've been in meetings, you know, where it is okay for, you know, the guys to kind of lose it and lose their cool and everything, right? And then like I would get passionate about something and like, oh, you're too emotional. Come on, you know, from that. And actually, you know, I had a leader once tell me, you know, your biggest strength is also one of your weaknesses, you know, from that, because, you know, Brene Brown says, you know, good leaders or daring leaders are never quiet about hard things, right? And so that's what I try to embody. It's not to be like a naysayer or anything, but if I need to speak it, I will speak it, right? And sometimes that works with people and sometimes it doesn't. And so over the years, I've had to figure out how to adjust, still be me, still do that, right? But depending on which leader it is, you know, you adjust a little bit to their styles, right? I think that's a big thing, right?
Who are we? We're HQTS, the premier quality assurance provider to industries worldwide. Behind every smooth delivery, every on-time product, we're there. Serving over 50,000 brands for over 30 years in over 40 countries with more than 80 offices worldwide, we stitch the world's supply chain together. Problems are everywhere. That's why you need a single solution. We test your products, dig into your supplier, audit your factories, and keep you on track with compliance. Driven by data-backed solutions, we catch risks early to protect your products and your reputation, because sometimes it's the smallest details that make the biggest difference. The right chemicals in your products, the right words on your documentation, the right people in your factories. It's keeping your products in check as they travel across all 5 continents, and fueling the world's transition towards a greener, more sustainable future. We're across your entire supply chain and every major industry. With top accreditations like CNAS, we work with governments everywhere to set the bar for global quality. HQTS, stitching the global supply chain together.
You know, for a long time, it's like, okay, if you're 25 to 30, right? Like, what's your marriage plan? What's your baby plan?
Right.
What's your, and that the people kind of look at that, and that could hold them back, but I think you get in certain levels, also people, some of it goes away too, from that perspective. So the bias that might be there, and depending on industry as well.
Right. It's actually quite funny because I'd imagine for some companies, when hiring male and females posed with the same question, they might see, for a female, it's a disadvantage because you're planning on marriage and you're planning for birth. That could take you away from the workforce and your career.
Right.
When a man goes through that, they might see that as motivation.
Yeah.
We've got him because this guy is about to have a family and we've got this guy tied to the company for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
Right. And we dangle that carrot and there he goes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do see that, that conversation could be where you could see the differences or that they have to go through. And I think overall, just, I wouldn't say the challenges, right? So it's, like I said, the emotional piece, what's their life story piece, it is, women will, I want to say they're not confident, but there are a lot of women that do lack a confidence if they don't have every box checked, for a job description, right? So then they don't apply for that. Sometimes guys, they don't care. They're like,
You're right.
I'm on it. Hey, I got one half thing. I'm applying, right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, to be able, and, this is what IPWS wants to be able to do, is have people develop their confidence through community, to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to go for that, right? And and I'm going to rock it. So I think that's another one, is that women will tend to be just shy away sometimes. Not all women, but some women will shy away if they don't meet everything. So, and we tend to, I don't want to generalize, but that when we talk imposter syndromes or, that thing, and some people say it's not really a thing. It can be though. Like the moment you say yes to something, you start guessing, am I the right person? Am I the right person to be doing this podcast? I don't know.
I hope so. Teresa, is that you?
Yeah, exactly.
Teresa Hudzinski?
Why would they want to listen to what I have to say? We automatically go into that.
Exactly like you say. A lot of men, by large, I'm not going to generalize, but by large, men tend to be more confident in certain situations. That could also be seen as impulse, right? So I feel like a lot of women are more careful. Hence the imposter syndrome, right? So in certain situations, that could actually be an advantage for women. Sadly, in a corporate environment, it may not be seen so.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what my own experience, I think in some things is that, I like to, one, make sure everyone I'm working with has the context, right?
Yeah.
And some things, they just really take time, right? You can't just, it's not a switch, right? Where and, I've been told, hey, this is a fast-paced environment. You're not, you need to move on this faster. I'm not going to give you wrong numbers because you want me to do this or try to implement something. That I want to make something that's sustainable, helps us grow, helps, from that perspective. So, I do see that as because we're kind of stepping back and taking the time to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, more detailed. Yeah. Do you fundamentally believe that gender bias is prominent across the board right now, globally?
I still think it is. We see a lot of the setbacks in other countries. My own country, specifically coming from the US.
Yeah.
We took a lot of steps backward in the past few years in that case. And we'll continue to do so probably for a bit of time. And then you see pockets here. No country is perfect, from that, but I just see that it's still there, right? And we can say all we want, that yes, we're looking at you equally for the job, but it will be different depending on who the hiring leader is. It's not,
That's
you can't
true.
make it foolproof, from that. So.
A common argument I usually hear is management currently is still predominantly male across the board. I mean, like certain industries more than others, but across the board, management's still predominantly men. And when men are hiring, they do say a lot of the preference is for, I guess, like something similar or familiar to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So arguably someone at an investment banking firm, that hiring, or the management that's hiring would want to hire someone they feel familiar to. He feels like a killer. It reminds me of the younger me. Let's get him on board, give him a shot.
I have to say sometimes women do the same, right?
Right.
From that perspective,
Correct.
because one of my former teams is I had to continue to be like self-aware. Okay, you're not giving it all to the women. Like, how are you developing the guys, right?
Yeah,
because there was differences between their styles,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so it's like, no, step back, So I think it's fair to say we have to all do our part in making sure that the gender bias doesn't happen.
What strategies would you recommend women implicate in order to almost equalize or mitigate these biases?
I do feel that it is important. So when you talk mentorship, sponsorship, it's really about who you have around you, right? From that, and that's the important thing about community, but even the people you surround yourself with, right? And so if you surround yourself with the people that keep it real, right? Whether it be men or women, that keep it real, that keep you, that can back you up and hold you up when you can't do it yourself, right? From that, or also people that walk beside you as you're going through it, stepping into the next, whatever is next. Say mentorship is key. Sponsorship is key, because by having conversations with other people that can give you different perspectives, from that helps with all of this. And you start using your own filters, on how to navigate situations, or how you're going to deal with your, crazy boss, from that, you talk to people that can give you very objective advice to be able to filter where you might not be able to, if you don't have that conversation, you're going to just overplay it in your head or something, from that. So definitely people with experience and life lessons. It's like creating your own board, who's the CEO in your life, CFO, like from that, and who you keep around. So I think a strong support system is critical, in that sense.
Creating your dream team.
Yes,
for
exactly.
life.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I was speaking to a very good friend of mine. She asked me as well. She was asking me, what would I look for in a mentor? Because she's currently going through a phase in her life where she feels like a lot of the questions that she has in life, she can't answer herself. So she's actively looking for a mentor. What should they look for when they're seeking a mentor?
I think it really kind of depends on which industry you're coming from. So if you truly just want life mentorship or, from that, it doesn't really matter as much. But if you're trying to go down a certain path with the career or whatnot, I would definitely find someone with that expertise, right? Like to be able to understand what you're talking about. Life can be a little bit different because you can come at it from many different angles. But for a career, you also want someone who can objectively give you feedback on something that you might be a subject matter expert in, right? From that. We have a group called Mentor Walks, started by Michelle from M on the Bund many years ago, and where we just meet once a month, usually from March to November. And we've shifted to go quarterly this year, but and basically there's no you don't have to make a connection, but on that day you have someone to ask questions to, right? So you walk and you talk, right? Like for an hour, right? And so and that's
it's a
just
group of people.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's we have about maybe 50 mentors, professionals
Wow.
throughout the thing, and then you go and you sign up to whoever, whether you like that person or the industry, from that, and that's just a nice way to kind of, I would say, dive into mentorship. And then you can see, okay, yeah, this was a good mentor for me. I want to find someone like this. Or, I don't know, maybe let me go back and think about that. So that's what the two paths, right? Depending on what you really want to be mentored on is really what you would look. But you want someone that's going to be interactive, right?
Yep.
But as a mentee, you also have to remember you need to do the work. Right?
Yes.
You can't expect, there has to be some prep. You have to come prepared. What do you want? Because everyone's busy, right? And you want to make the best use of the time, right? From that experience. So there is the work that a mentee would have to do. But I would start small, find those small mentor groups, and then that can kind of, you get a feel for it. Because some people, and then there's different, because you also have coaches out there, right?
Right.
And so,
which are completely different.
Completely different.
Right.
And I think that sometimes people don't understand the difference between the
Coach
ones,
from mentor.
right? Yeah. And then there's sponsors, right?
Oh.
So sponsors really is saying your name when you're not in the room, right? Or that from that. So you don't work for them, you know, it's not like your boss or anything like that. But, you know, through my time in Shanghai, you know, I have met a lot of great people who have sponsored me just in the sense of, hey, you know, this opportunity is coming up, you know, like, how about, you know, if you think of Theresa, you know, or from that. So, so that is also critical. You can have a mentor, but you need a sponsor too, because we all face that. Is like they're talking about opportunities, and if no one brings up your name and you're not in the room, then, you know, you're gonna miss out.
It's almost like real life, like affiliates or affiliate marketing, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the highlights for you that IPWS has, I guess, milestones, initiatives?
Yeah. Well, we last year we celebrated our 30th anniversary. So for a nonprofit volunteer organization to be there in Shanghai for that long, that was huge. You know, from that. We have Women Leadership Awards, so one of the longest running leadership awards in China, where, you know, things like Entrepreneur of the Year, Business Leader of the Year, we have a he for she, you know, from that. So basically, you know, nominations come in through the community, and we have an independent jury, you know, from that. Prior years, we used to have like a summit, you know, a learning summit with the awards, and so we will have the awards again because we just had them in November. We'll have them again in the fall from this year, and we are really striving to do maybe kind of a career day. This is kind of one I'm excited about. Because knowing I had recently switched jobs, and, you know, my husband kind of went through, but really kind of have a day where we can have the great speakers that we have throughout Shanghai to kind of give knowledge on things. You have CV prep, you know, image consultant, all the things that, you know. So that's going to come together.
And that's coming up.
Yeah, we don't have the date yet, so it's April-ish, May. Right, like, from that we got to land on that, but I'm super excited about that.
Men can also go.
Yes, absolutely. Good. It's not going to be.
I'll be there.
You know, it's just really just a resource, you know, because our theme this year is courage to step into the next, right? We all are kind of changing. We're still transforming after coming out of, you know, 4 years of craziness here, and the you know, in a lot of industries everything went back to everything, and then some went the other way, right? From that. So we're still kind of finding our way, I think, in Shanghai and in many places in the world. So and a lot of companies downsizing, or, you know, so people are just like, okay, what's next, right? My big thing coming out of what I think we learned from the pandemic is we figured out during that time what we like, what we don't like, and what we no longer accept. And I think people are still working on no longer accept this. So
that's the hard one.
I've worked at this company for so long, I can't handle this type of, you know, how they're doing this, you know, it's time for me to, you know, make the change. So I'm super excited about that. And just every event that we put out, like I said, there's so much love put into it and passion, because we really truly are, you know, wanting to support the community. And like I said, some are wins, some are like, okay, we got to go back and rethink it. A few years ago when we were in lockdown, we decided we were going to do a comedy night online.
Interesting. Online?
Yeah.
Okay,
so it was a Zoom. Yeah.
Well, there's your issue.
So it was, but it, you know, it was one of those things where maybe the language is a little bit much, you know, because you had, and it was, so it was just like, okay, some of these jokes, you know, like maybe we're not ready to go down that path, right? You know, but, you know, we just recently had a mixer at Rink, you know, and just bring people together and have a good night and lots of fun.
I saw photos of that.
It was a great, you know, evening just to bring people together, because, you know, when you come to some of our events, we're not looking for people to do hard sells, you know, with each other. It's really, what's their common, you know, interests, and let's talk, and, you know, walking away with meeting somebody new. So
within your audience, you have different demographics, right? Women, but still different types of women. For young women now entering the workforce, do you have any advice for them?
Really just be open to experiences. I think that sometimes, you know, as we're starting into the workforce, we want to just see the meteoric rise, you know, coming up. And it really, some things just take time and experience, right, to get there. But to keep the passion and the youthful, like the enthusiasm, right? Like people just, you know, just getting out of university, they just want to jump into it, and they have so much. So some of it is, some of it will come, the experience will come, from there. So I would say that one of our key things is that we do have people just graduating from university, and you have people that are right on the edge of retirement, right? Like, so we span, right? So how do we now close the gap between the different ages, in different stages in the workforce, right? From that, because that is a critical thing, right? Because it's just like, oh, you're young, you don't know anything, right? You know how many times I say these kids today, and I don't really mean it in a bad way, but then some of it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, let's take a breath, right? And like, because, there needs to be some structure in some things, right? And so how do we make sure that we get rid of our own bias?
That is true.
From that, because women also have bias against other women, right? Different things. So, so that is coming out of it, just not to lose the enthusiasm, but also know some things, they do take time, right? As you build, like anything, and as they want to grow into leaders, leadership is a relationship, right? It takes time. It's not, again, a switch, right? You have to build trust. You have to build authenticity, with your teams, and some of that comes from experience. Some of that, that. So just be patient in that aspect.
Do you believe leadership is for everyone?
No.
It's very quick.
Yes, because I've been working with my new team on this and trying to see that. Yes, some leadership skills can be taught. Yes. But not everyone wants to be a leader.
Key word is wants.
Right. And I think that's the critical piece of this, is that people want sometimes the leadership title because it might come with more money or that, but the responsibility, they might not necessarily want.
There's a trade-off.
It means. Because at the end of the day, no matter how many flat organizations you have, one person is still responsible, and you have to be, as a leader, you have to be able to take that responsibility, from that. And that's and I see it keep changing, and depending, my daughter's a Gen Alpha, so let's see what's going to come, how she's going to, from that, but she, she understands what I do with IPWS and what being a leader means to me, and she's trying to find, okay, but you're always going and doing this, but I'm doing this because of this, and if we want to see change, or you want to do this, we have to do these things. So,
I feel like
for everybody.
You're right. I feel like there's a common discussion, especially now with the rise of empowering women, inspiring women. There are definitely an array of wonderful female talent, and they deservingly so these leadership roles. With this big spotlight on leadership for women, though, I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on some women that might think, you know what, I never really want to be a leader, but should I?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing, because again, if you don't really know what it all entails, right, until you really think about it, and then some people can try, right, and then they can say, okay, definitely not for me, right. You have great people that are awesome individual contributors, and that you need those people, right?
Which is also fine.
Yes, absolutely. I had a conversation with one of my team members, and I was thinking, okay, we're talking about, pay rates and all of that. I said, we got to create this baseline, because if they're just doing their job, right, but they want more money, right, like I've got to see something, different, from that. And, one of my managers, he's like, well, what if they just want to come to work and go home?
Fine.
Absolutely, but then that's a decision, right? And then those opportunities will be different,
Correct.
From that. And that there, again, nothing's wrong with it, right? Because that's, for everybody, they have their own path, right? What they feel comfortable. Leadership is very uncomfortable, right? And you have to be okay with that. Some people don't want to be.
Looking ahead, what trends do you see, or what trends do you forecast or expect for women in the workplace?
I think it's for both, honestly. And I'm not going to get this right, but so Gallup just did a study, 58 countries, right? And so what team members or employees are looking for: trust, hope, compassion, stability, right? Stability is in the safety, psychological safety, right? From that, they want the respect, integrity, and honesty from a leader, and trust. Compassion, they want to feel cared for. Hope is they want to feel positive about the future. They want clear direction, right? Because why would you want to work for a company where everything's doomsday all the time, right? So hope for clear direction. Here my company, this is, I'm the CEO, here's my vision on how to move it forward, right? So I think everybody is kind of in that spot, right now. People want work-life harmony. I never will say balance because that doesn't exist. We all know it doesn't exist.
I agree with
right?
that, actually.
So, but you can find, and I used to say work-life integration, but that might not work for some people. Just my teams have always been a part of my family as they grew here, especially in Shanghai. So that for me worked, right? But, harmony is probably more like so.
Great choice of words, because you're right. When I think work-life balance, a balancing act, right? One more. Harmony is kind of like, I'm okay with a bit more work, a bit less life, but it's in harmony. I enjoy this, right? This is a good ratio for me.
Right. And everyone's harmony level will be different, right? Depending on what stage of life you're in. So.
What key skills, so we're talking skills for a woman to learn to help excel her in her foreseeable future?
Well, I think, we'll put like hard technical skills aside, right? And I really do believe, and I just talked about this a little bit earlier today, but there's a couple good books out there, right? And so I think if you read the book Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, right, which is sometimes hard because it's about vulnerability, right? And so sometimes, especially in Chinese, it doesn't translate very well. So I did that with my team in Shanghai. It took them quite a while to do that. But I think as a visionary or lead, if you really truly want to go into leadership, that's a good book to read. Now, I would pair it with Fearless Organization, a Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson, I believe it is. That's more tactical, right, of why you need safe space from that. So, and it gives case studies, and that works really well with teams, from that. So those are two reads that, just even to dabble and start with that. But I think really what it is about being authentic, right? And I think it doesn't do women any favors if they're not themselves. I know for me, if I'm not me, I can feel it. It shows in my work. It shows in how I interact with people from that. Building the trust, being present, being self-aware. I think that is a critical, thing is self-aware, how your behavior impacts your team, right? From that. If I know I'm going through, like I said, with last year when my family was not with me, right? I was short, no patience, nothing, and I could see myself start snapping at them, and that's not really me. And I really had to step back, and I had to apologize to them because I was just like, you know what? Because you can then, once I'm that way, then they're that way, right, to other people. So it's really about that self-awareness on how to do it. Communication is critical, right? You have to be able to stop and have an uncomfortable conversation with people, right, sometimes. Or clear communication, so it sets the direction, right, from that. I think, it's still number one, I think, would be communication.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Communication skills, of course, that's male and females, no problem. But having those hard conversations, I feel like, I'm not going to generalize, but my life experience tells me that most women kind of shy away from that type of conflict or hard conversations to have, whereas males, a lot of the time, it's just like, just say it and be done with it and move on, right?
I think we're always trying to look for the right words. I think one critical thing, and it's also on the Dare to Lead, is like engaged feedback checklist, right? So first of all, you should never give feedback when you're angry. That's like the worst conversation you have, right? So it's really kind of, it checks in with you, the checklist to say, okay, I'm ready to give feedback. I'm ready to do this. I've thought about this from this angle, So I think that is, and then it helps with the difficult conversation to make sure you're in the right mindset to have it. So.
This quote was in your bio. When your focus is people, that is when you create the biggest impact. What does that quote mean to you?
I will always say PPI for life, right? People, purpose, impact. It's all about people. For me as a leader, I can't do anything without my people, right? So I have to take care of them by creating an environment where they can fail, they can be creative, they can innovate, right? And so really you have to, it's just about people. I mean, it sounds like silly to say, it's really about people. I need that connection with people. I need to be able to help develop them to get to that. That's what I love, especially about leadership. And I know when you put the right focus on people, amazing things can happen, right? And, and you drive things with purpose. You have a cause that you're doing together, right? From that, and then leadership impacts people in ways, I think we take it for granted, but you really do have an impact on people's lives, whether it be personal, professional, development. And you really have to, they're not just your people 9 to 6, right? They have a life, they have things that are really real in their lives. So you have to put that into consideration. I think that if given the chance and you believe in your people, they will rise to the occasion every single time, from that. That's been my experience, and I've had some pretty difficult projects and, from that. But you have to create that space, right? So really, you start with the people. You can't start anywhere else. You have to start with the people.
Well, I'm going to steal that quote, that's for sure. I'm going to steal that one. Well, thank you so much, Theresa, for joining us on the HQTS podcast. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.